Welcome to Passing the Plate, the podcast that's all about food, traditions, and the wonderful connections they create. I'm Lisa Lissom, the genealogist and family history expert behind Are You My Cousin?
And I'm Ashley Covelli, the food writer and recipe developer behind Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen. We'll be your guides on this flavor-packed adventure. We're not just talking about recipes. We're diving into family history, exploring new cultures, and preserving favorite recipes for future generations. In short, we're celebrating the stories and tastes that come with every bite.
So grab a seat at the table and let's embark on a journey of flavor, tradition, and connection. This is Passing the Plate, where every episode is a feast for the senses and a celebration of the ties that nourish our souls.
Do you feel like chicken tonight? Whether you remember helping make that shake and bake chicken with your mom or being part of a real farm-to-table chicken experience, chicken dinner is always a classic. In this episode, we'll share some stories and inspiration to spice up your next chicken dinner.
You know, it's funny, Ashley, when I work with my old family photos, which I do a lot in my family history searches, and when I pull up the old family photos, there were a lot that were taken around meal times. And, typically, a holiday, maybe just more of a casual one, could be a family reunion. But what I see are chickens. Now, it might be a chicken being served on the table, but on the outside photos, I see a lot of pictures of chickens as well. Obviously, I have a lot of rural farmers, rural Virginia farmers in my ancestry. And so I would see the chickens, and some of them, of course, for eggs, but then they were also, then they became stew chickens. But what I can actually tell you is, those chickens were skinny running around.
Got a lot of exercise.
I guess I noticed, I'm like, they're just always these little skinny chickens, of course. The funny thing is, though, about chickens, because they were a very, much a part of my ancestors and being on the farm and feeding, that my grandmother was someone who, when they had chickens, they, used them for eggs. And then when they were too old for laying, they became chicken stew. And so my grandmother was actually the one who would, wring their necks. She was not squeamish, and so she would do it. Well, one time her neighbor came over, and her neighbor did not like to do that part of the chicken, taking care of the chicken. And she handed the chicken to my grandmother, and my grandmother wrung the chicken's neck. And her neighbor looked horrified. And my grandmother said, "What's wrong?" She goes, "I wasn't asking you to wring its neck. It's not ready for the stew pot yet. I was asking you about," I forget, something about the chicken and the weight and something about taking care of the chicken. And it was she was just so used to people bringing her chickens, because she was the one who would do that for them on their little group. So that family had chicken stew that night. Accidentally. But it was just it's just a story that really sticks with me in my head.
Oh, that's funny. That poor neighbor.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, well, they didn't have eggs for that week.
Yeah. I remember my husband used to tell me his mother's mother. I remember whenever it would snow, she would be like very concerned, like, "Do you have a chicken? Like, do you have a chicken either in the freezer or the fridge, like a whole chicken? You got to have a chicken." And he told me stories of when her and his grandfather used to come over, that she would make a chicken in their kitchen, and she would like have a cleaver, and she would just be like going at it, chopping it up. And he said there would be like chicken stuff just like flying all over the kitchen, like just not maybe like the most conscientious, tidy cook, but hopefully it was delicious.
That I was like, oh, that just had visions of that happening. And then the next thing that hits my head is, that's a lot of cross-contamination in a kitchen.
Yeah, 100%. In my mind, it looked like what those skits, the skits in the Muppet Show with the Swedish chef, like just seems very that, like throwing everything all over the place. But yeah, maybe that's where he got his like really tidy tendencies, was from like chicken trauma, and just like needs to make sure everything's tidy. So hey, whatever it takes, I guess. But Lisa, aside from like the commercial jingles that we teased in the intro, what comes to mind when you hear chicken dinner?
I think of baked chicken. We would definitely have fried chicken, but my mother didn't really fry a lot of chicken. We typically had more baked chicken. And so what I remember is maybe having family coming over. Maybe my grandparents were coming to visit, or they were in town, and she would bake a chicken or roast a chicken in the roaster. So that's what I remember. And I remember that they would always give me the chicken leg because it had a handle on it.
Yeah,
You know, you
there you
pick it
go.
up and eat. But here's the kicker. I didn't like chicken legs. So for many years as a kid, I didn't really like chicken because
Mm,
all I associated that with was a chicken leg, which is dark meat. Well, I don't actually like dark meat, it turned out, because one time I forget there was an extra a cousin may have been over. Anyway, I didn't get a chicken leg, thank goodness. And they gave
mhm.
me just, part of, I guess, the chicken breast. And I love chicken.
Yeah,
So
it's so
that's sort of what I remember when it comes to chicken. And to this day, I don't eat chicken legs.
yeah. They're not my favorite. I'm more of a white meat fan, and also, I mean, I like thighs on occasion, but I prefer, but it works out well because my husband prefers dark meat, so it's like, we can both enjoy. You talking about those family meals reminded me that my grandpa and then my mom used to do barbecue chicken, where they would just like grill chicken and brush it with barbecue sauce, and it would get that nice like kind of like charred, sweet, yeah, that like
Mhm.
crust. It was just I loved that. But when I think of a chicken dinner, somebody says that, I think of like a roast chicken, like Ina Garten has one. Thomas Keller's got a good recipe, and his actually inspired us now when we do make a roast chicken at home. We'll put a little Dijon on the side and kind of swipe the meat through the Dijon as you eat it. It's a really nice accompaniment to the
That
chicken.
sounds good. I've never tried that. I like that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, it's really good. And I remember too, and Ina Garten's newest, she's got a memoir out. Is it Be Ready When the Luck Happens? Is that what it's called?
Mm,
Yeah,
I've
I
read that.
I really enjoyed it. I listened on audiobook and she was talking about, there's a section where she talks about the presentation of her roast chicken at her shop in the Hamptons, and it was interesting. Do you remember if it was do you remember which way she presented it that people actually wanted to eat it? I can't remember if it was when it's whole on a platter, it didn't look as appetizing as when it's carved up, like as if you were serving it on your table, and it sold better
Think
that way.
Yes, I think it was the carved up version that sold better.
Yeah, so it's funny. Looks a little more inviting, like it looks like real food and not something that's on display.
Yeah, it also shows the possibilities, I guess, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the
Yeah,
original.
and I guess too, then you don't think like, ugh, I have to carve that because that can be a little tedious. And actually, we'll link to I'll find a video on YouTube about how to break down a chicken if that's something that's intimidating. Because once you do it a few times, you'll get the hang of it. But cutting a whole chicken, if you've roasted it, it's not as difficult as it seems.
Yeah. You're right. It's not the first few times, boy, I made a mess of it. But definitely it's once you kind of get the hang of it and do it a couple times, you're right. It's doesn't need to be intimidating
Yeah.
for that kind of thing. Thinking about fried chicken, we did have some fried chicken, though we didn't really do it that much in my home. Mainly, we didn't really like mother didn't really like frying things because it kind of made such a mess in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And but I do remember chicken tetrazzini. Do you remember
Mm.
this at like potlucks or covered dishes that we
So,
would have? It's a way to use up leftover chicken. So if you had a roasted chicken, then you could take any leftovers and you can turn it into a chicken tetrazzini, and that would often show up either at somebody's home, like if they needed a meal for something.
mm-hmm.
It went in the freezer. It went into family potluck type things. Similar thing to we do it at Thanksgiving, like with the turkey, leftover turkey as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah, I've made turkey tetrazzini. There's a recipe on the Lemon Bowls website that I can link. That was, I think it was a tetrazzini. It might have just been called like a turkey noodle casserole, but things like that are a great way to stretch cooked meat that you have left because you're stretching it out with noodles and everything, so you can make a little more of it than what you have on hand. Yeah, my tetrazzini memories are the frozen Stouffer's meal. Me and my mom used to get those, and the best part was you microwave them just a little longer than it says to, because then you get the little crispy bits on the edges. We always liked that a lot. Um, but yeah, my southern grandpa, he liked making fried chicken also. So that's definitely an early chicken dinner memory. But my first chicken dish I ever cooked, I remembered when I was in middle school in home ec. We made this stir fry with chicken breast, and it had bell peppers and this little like soy sauce cornstarch slurry, and it was and garnished with green beans, and it just there's something so comforting about that, and I have that I've revisited that recipe as an adult, and it's tempting to like overcomplicate it to add new things just because it's a little more fancy. But there's something about that really simple, just like basic chicken and peppers that's over rice that's really good. I We'll see if by the time this is aired, if it's up on my website yet, because I kind of want to have that little piece of my one of my early memories up there. But it was a good one. But I'm
It sounds
curious.
delicious.
Yeah, and I don't know if they still do home ec. I don't think they do. I'm not sure. I would I'd love it if my kid got to do that kind of thing in school because it is such an interesting way to try something new and kind of out of your own home environment, somewhere new, trying something.
Are you worried your family recipes will be lost to time? Imagine generations gathering around your family, sharing stories, and enjoying dishes passed down for years. With the Passing the Plate video webinar and ebook bundle, you can make that happen. You'll learn how to capture those cherished recipes before they're lost from memory, uncover the secrets and heartwarming stories behind each dish, and connect you to your family's history in a powerful and delicious way. To learn more, head to passingtheplate.org/resources.
What types of chicken dishes do you cook at home, Lisa?
These days, I probably tend to do a little more grilled chicken. So we'll grill chicken out, we'll marinate it, perhaps, and grill it, or we'll do just you know just your basic salt, pepper, just nothing special, and then we'll grill it and put it with vegetables. It is easy to get dry when we grill it, so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we have to be careful. I actually do a lot of crock pot chicken these
Yeah.
days, a little bit more. I tend to use probably cook. I tend to use chicken thighs in some of the stews that I'll do.
Mm-hmm.
You have some wonderful stews that I actually make and like to keep. So I tend to do a little bit more along the lines of crock pot chicken and
Mm-hmm.
using my Instapot as well. So I know, Ashley, you one of your recipes that you have on your site is one of my favorites, and it uses chicken thighs, bacon. There's potatoes and carrots. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a really delicious stew that really everyone in my family loves. So it's definitely gets is in my rotation of meals that I make, and it's super easy to do.
I love that so much. I'm actually tonight planning or this afternoon planning to make a chicken crock pot. I'm using the slow cooker mode on my Instant Pot, but it's like it's supposed to be an orzo lemon spinach chicken soup that I found on somebody else's website. If it turns out good, I'll link it in the show notes. I won't link a bad recipe for you. It called for whole wheat orzo. It said you could use regular. I like the idea of whole wheat orzo, but my store didn't have it, so I got some whole wheat that like kind of that like elbows that are a little extra curly, so they have like a little extra loop on them. So I got something like that. We'll see how it turns out. It
Yeah,
sounds
I
really
look
good
forward to
though.
hearing how it turns. Yeah, how it
Yeah.
works for you.
One of the things that I think of with like chicken trauma aside from like dry chicken is a term called wood chicken. And I asked Lisa if she had ever heard of it. Luckily, she's never experienced it. If you have, I'm so sorry. It is an awful texture. It kind of kills the meal for you, but I think Lisa you found some articles describing it because it's not just like a weird random thing. It is a legitimate issue that happens sometimes with chicken.
It is, and I had never heard of it, and so I definitely had to go look it up. I found a site called bbqhost.com, which talks about woody chicken, and it basically says it is a texture thing, and it only really affects the chicken breast. It doesn't
Mhm.
affect the chicken thighs and other parts of it. But one of the ways that you might know you can actually notice it if you know what you're looking for, at a grocery store type thing, is the chicken breast might be a little discolored. It's kind of hard to touch.
Mm.
It has kind of a hard feel to it, perhaps. But and then of course, if you cook it, it's just a very unpleasant texture that would be there.
Yeah.
It's also going to be a little bit paler in color as well. But it's yeah, not definitely not something that I would, ever want to experience and hope
Yeah.
folks don't. So I don't know that how often that you actually find it, but, again, it's just really just on the chicken breast, but it's not in the other parts of the chicken. So apparently it's not harmful, but it's definitely not one you wanna consume.
It's one of those things where I don't like wasting food. I can usually just like even if it's not that great, whatever, I will eat it. I've prepared it. But that's one of the times when we'll ditch it. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. So I have a question because, again, I mentioned earlier when I cook, sometimes chicken does dry out pretty easily if you're not cautious or not watchful when you're cooking. How do what are some ways to really keep a chicken moist and juicy when we're preparing it?
Yeah, well, one of the things I do personally avoid usually is ground chicken because I feel like ground chicken just tends to be really dry. I prefer ground turkey if I'm gonna do something like that. But if you're working with chicken, you could use a dry brine that will help. Basically, the salt in that kind of penetrates through the skin and it goes down into the meat and really gets keeps it nice and juicy when you do cook it. Cooking sous vide because you can control the temperature so you can be sure that it's cooked all the way through, but you're not overcooking it, you're not drying it out. Marinating is a really good option because you can marinate it to help keep some moisture in it, and then when you cook it, it just seems to be a little more juicy usually. Um, when I reheat chicken, I'll usually add like a splash of water, or if you have like chicken stock or something, just like put a little bit of liquid in there with it when you reheat it so it doesn't dry out in the microwave. And then another thing is, even if you don't eat the skin, you can cook it with the skin on. That'll help kind of keep everything juicy. And even with dry meat is often juicier, more. We're trying not to use the word that a lot of people really much dislike, but you'll get more tender meat. And I will say that my I had a meeting with a nutritionist, and she told me that uh, you can it doesn't really affect the cholesterol level if you eat just the meat without the skin of chicken that has been cooked with the skin on. So you can keep it on for the cooking for the flavor to keep it all juicy. And then if you don't eat the skin, if that's something you're concerned about, maybe just have a little piece. But you know what I mean? Like you don't have to worry about that part.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that
So
was
what
a surprise to me.
Yeah. So what are beyond roasting a chicken, what
Hmm.
are some other interesting ways that we can have it at home, but it's not too difficult?
Yeah, well, my favorite usually is chicken fajitas. It doesn't take much effort. It just takes a little time, mostly unattended, to caramelize the onions, which you don't have to do super, you don't have to make them super caramelized, but it really does make a difference. That does involve a marinade that comes together really quickly. Um, a kind of different baked chicken type of dish that my father-in-law used to make is chicken thighs baked with potatoes and peas. And this is something where he used canned peas, and I'm not usually into canned peas, but for this particular recipe, it works really well. And that one, you literally like put the stuff in the baking dish and you put it in the oven and you forget about it. So very, very low effort. There's one recipe that I love that's a paillard. It's like a really thin cut piece of chicken breast that has you mix up some dill and grainy mustard and some white wine vinegar and a little olive oil and shallots. And you take part of that mixture out and you toss some tomatoes with it, but then the rest of it you toss the chicken breast for just like you don't really marinate it, just for a couple minutes really, but that flavor gets on the chicken that you then either grill or cook on the stovetop. And then you top it with this relish kind of thing with the tomatoes and dill. It comes together quickly. It doesn't take too long to cook and it tastes nice and fresh. So we really like that. There's if you have an air fryer, if you like chicken wings, that's the best way to get crispy skin. The air fryer does a great job for that. So I have a barbecue chicken pizza with smoked mozzarella that I make that's really easy. I actually did it with a teen cooking class, virtual class several years ago, and they all really enjoyed it. And you don't have to use smoked mozzarella, but it's a nice kind of different, a little bit of a different flavor, and it's not a lot of work.
And I have to say that that is like one of our favorite go-to pizzas
Oh,
around here. So
I'm
yeah,
so
you've got
glad.
so for those
It's
people listen, you need to check this out.
it's a fun, I mean, I feel like especially living in New York, you can get very strict, like this is what a pizza is and this is what a pizza isn't. But like whatever you call it, You can call it a flatbread, whatever. It's delicious. If it tastes good, it tastes good. That's what matters to me. And then if you have like some time and you really want to spend some time on a dish for a group, I have a chicken enchilada recipe that's really good. It is time consuming though, so that's like a weekend one. But I'll link to the I have like I'm laughing because I wrote chicken landing page, where the chickens land. It's a page on my website where you can find all my chicken recipes.
I'm gonna check more of those out too. All right. Head over to the show notes for recipes mentioned in this episode at passingtheplate.org/52. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Passing the Plate. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of food, traditions, and the amazing connections they create.
As always, it's been a pleasure sharing these delicious stories with you. Remember, food is more than just sustenance. It's a way to connect the dots between our past, present, and future.
And until next time, happy eating, happy connecting, and pass the plate. Head to passingtheplate.org/podcast for show notes.